We're alive.
Hello, everybody out there in Talk to the Animals land. Greetings from a very hot and steamy Sunshine Coast, Australia. And Susie, where are you today?
I am in Taipei, Taiwan.
Also hot and steamy or not so? You look like you're a bit rugged up.
No, it's not. It was very, very windy today, but it's warm, but it's windy here. And this is apparently the most or the windiest part of Taipei. So very interesting, Taipei region. And we were here actually working on horses for the last 4 days. So it was really fun. We didn't ride, but we worked on them. We did body work on them. So that was really, really fun. Yeah.
And that leads a nice segue into our conversation today. So, riding in the zone. So, what is that, Susie? How would you express that to our eager audience today?
Well, to me, it's so okay. I think maybe backing up for a second here, because the zone of awareness is what we're really talking about. And what does that even mean? And a lot of people are not clear what that is. So, to me, the zone of awareness is where a body is aware of its surroundings, and every body has a zone of awareness. So a horse's body, a person's body, a mouse's body, we all have a zone of awareness. And it's a describable, definable space that we're aware of. And a lot of us actually as people, we're not really willing to be aware of our bodies beyond the room that we're in, or sometimes when we're outside, we might have a little bit of a bigger zone that we have available. But I think actually for the most part, we do have also a larger zone than we are really wanting to know about. But a horse's zone can be really big. Like a horse's zone could be, a square mile or a square kilometer large. And when you start riding a horse, it's a really cool idea to actually ask for your zone to be bigger than the horse's zone. Now, that could be a bit tricky. I don't know, Viv, if you've ever played with that. Like I once sat on a horse and I asked my zone to be bigger, and I got so dizzy for a moment. Because I was like, whoa, what's this? I didn't even know how to be with that energy, but it was really cool. Like, so yeah.
And it's literally just asking, if this is a completely new concept to you, it's literally as simple as just asking that question. There is no doing to any of this. But if you're a bit more of a visual person, or you like a bit more details, it's like, imagine that you have this spherical, I don't know, I guess like a bubble or something around you, that as you ask, okay, the horse, how big do you require? How big is your zone? And how, for you riding, how big can your zone be to be greater than the horse's? So you actually have more awareness. So it's like that bubble or that space or that, just that spherical connection to everything around you, where you're not disconnecting from anything, becomes greater than the horse's. Because animals get anxious, and this works for the same for dogs. If you've got a dog that's reactive or a dog that's anxious or whatever, when their zone is collapsed, which is a bit more of a conversation, it's like they get into this frantic state. It's like they're in this squashed space, so their awareness is compressed. And so obviously if they're disconnected from their environment, they become hypervigilant, they become unsettled, they become very anxious. So going back to you having your zone greater, it's like you are letting the horse know, if you're riding, that you've got this. You're aware of what might be behind the bushes or over the hill. You know how horses are like, what was that? It was a leaf that moved. Oh my God, there's a stick on the road. Some horses can be really reactive. And so when you ride from that space, it's like they can feel a lot more calm and relaxed and know that you actually are riding with awareness too. You're not just in your head worrying about the neighbors and the kids at school, and because they perceive all of that. It's like when you get on their back and your head is full of stuff, they're very present with that energy. They can react to that energy. So when you make this choice and ask, okay, how big can my zone be? How big is the horse's zone? How big do I require to have my zone greater? Then it creates a sense of peace for you, and it also creates a sense of peace for the animal, and you can have a greater connection.
And the animal, like you said, I mean, I've literally seen an animal relax within seconds of asking the person to expand their zone out, you know. It sounds a bit crazy, but it actually really works. And if you are new to this, please try it, because especially when you go riding, you know, the horses, they are so aware of, like Viv said, you know, the things that are going on around them that might spook them, that might freak them out. And when you're willing to have the presence beyond what they're willing to be present about, then what you're creating in that moment is a sense of peace for the horse, because you are actually taking over leadership in a way. You are now, your zone is larger than theirs, and so they are like, oh, thank you, because they feel protected actually by you. And so, because the horse that is the lead horse usually has the biggest zone, you know. When you ask questions, how do we know this? Because we've been asking questions forever, and we're just looking at these things. And so, you know, you start asking these questions and you get this awareness, and it's like, oh, okay, so if I'm a leader, my zone also needs to be bigger than the zone of the animal that I'm working with. And like I said, sometimes that could be a little bit dizzy making, because you might not be used to your zone being as big as a horse's zone. And then, you know, Viv, you mentioned too about a collapsed zone, and I think we can show people actually how to change that too. So if you are ever working with an animal that's very spooked and very anxious all the time, and or falls over its own feet, or runs into objects, or feels like you want to touch it and they're like freaking out even though they saw you coming, those could all be signs of a collapsed zone. And it's actually really, really simple to expand that zone out. My camera was not unplugged, but okay.
Your camera just disappeared, Susie. You've turned into a yellow circle.
I know, that's very funny. So that is very funny.
Now you're giving us the dark and seductive look. Maybe the camera zone's collapsed.
Exactly. It just collapsed its own camera zone. That was very funny. I did not unplug anything. I mean, I don't even have a camera plugged in. It's the built-in camera. How do you unplug the built-in camera? I'm not sure, but apparently I know how to do that. I'm very crafty. So, but actually, to expand the zone, you literally just, you have to be with the animal. You can't do it from a distance, but you don't have to be right next to the animal. You can see the animal a little bit further away too. So, but you use your hands to lock into their zone. So you just you put your hands towards the animal's head, and you just ask for your energy to lock into their zone. And then once you have that sense that you're locked in, and please guys, just play with this, okay? There's no right or wrong here, and you can't do anything wrong. So pull, like literally physically pull the zone out. So you pull, and don't worry about it. You're not having to walk back a mile, okay? So this is just where you start to pull that zone out again for the animal, and it will find its own space. And we have seen shifts in animals anywhere from a few minutes to 24 hours, really big changes when a zone is collapsed and you are actually pulling that zone out again. And this whole process takes maybe a minute or two. So this is not like a half-hour process or anything like that. The animal can change so much. We had a horse that we worked with that was constantly nipping, like, so basically every time it was walking, it would hit its own feet and it would stumble. And the next day it was completely sure-footed just from that exercise. So I've seen incredible changes, and I'm sure Viv, you have too.
Well, yeah, and you've just described that beautifully too, Susie, because it restores that sense of peace and relaxation and connection to everything in their environment. So they're not having to be on guard, they're not having to be tense, and taut within themselves. They can actually just relax. So what can collapse the zone? It could be fireworks going off. It could be, it could be any kind of trauma. It could be some level of abuse. It could be, they've had a fall. It could be anything that could create that. So it's not so much about the why. It's just knowing that if your horse is super sensitive or reactive, or like you say, Susie, even though they can see you or they hear you, the moment you touch them, it's like they jump, or their skin kind of gives you that reaction. So yeah, it's such a simple process that can create really dynamic shifts with them. And and the same with other animals too, but particularly horses, I think, because they're such a large animal, and you can tend to see and perceive their energy a bit more than maybe a dog or a cat. So so what peace could it restore for them? What relaxation could it restore in their body?
And actually, I made a little video, I think it's on YouTube, where I expanded my dog Charlie's zone. And it was really cool. And I just used him, and I could tell actually that his zone was collapsed, and he's not being abused or anything like that. And what did collapse his zone? I don't know. But I just thought, oh, this is great. I can use him because his zone is collapsed. Well, the interesting part was the next day after I did that, he actually did exactly what we're talking about. Like, you would try to pet him on his head, and he would see your hand coming, but the moment you touched his head, it was like, oh, what was that? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but every time he would be like, woo. And so the next day I petted him and there was nothing. So it's really incredible how this one little exercise can make such a big difference for the animal.
Yeah. And know that each horse is different too, and what Susie was describing, where you kind of hold your hands and you kind of perceive the energy. It's almost like you'll feel like there might be a sensation in your body, or you might feel a contraction or a stickiness. It's going to be different for, however your awareness perceives this. But when you get to that space where the horse's zone is, you'll feel this sense of relaxation. You'll feel this sense of, oh, okay, that's better. Like if you've been in an aircraft for 24 hours, it's sitting in a really compressed seat for, with people almost sitting on top of you. And then you get out of that aircraft and you get out into the fresh air. It's a similar, a sense of, oh, that's better. I can move. You don't feel so claustrophobic in a lot of, in that reactive space.
That's actually a great analogy too. I like that.
Get me off this plane, or if you've been sitting on a train or in a car and somebody's been sitting right next to you. So yeah, and look, we have, like you said at the beginning, we have a zone too, and a lot of people, they have no sense of proprioception. They have no sense of where their body is in space, and so they bump into you, or they have no awareness of your personal space either. Animals can do this; they can walk straight into your space as well. So, just to put a different kind of bent on that, and to give you a different kind of awareness with that too. How do you like people just being in your face or bumping into you all the time as well? So, yeah. Thank you, Susie. Yet another amazing conversation.
Well, there was actually one little part, what you just said about the zone actually reminded me too. So when you are riding in the zone, meaning your zone is larger than the horse's zone, you actually also sometimes become aware of a situation before the horse does. And it's really kind of cool too, because you might be riding along and then all of a sudden you have a sense of some disturbance, but you don't see it yet. And the horse is not even responding yet. And then a minute later, all of a sudden, and you might actually recognize, oh, I was aware of something before the horse was aware of it. And this is where you can also learn to actually be proactive. And you don't have to then, be at the effect of your horse spooking because you had a sense of it before it actually occurred. And again, if you have never tried this or played with this, you might be saying, I don't know how that works. Yes, you will, if you are willing to play with this tool of expanding your zone beyond your horse's zone. And it's really kind of cool when you are aware of something that might occur before the horse is, because you can be so subtle then with changing that for the horse. You can help them work through something much quicker because it won't surprise you. And that's also the advantage of playing with this and playing with the idea of riding in the zone.
And guess what? It might just expand your awareness in other areas of your life. No, don't tell them that. Don't
we keep that a secret.
Don't give away the secrets of talk to the animals and consciousness. No. Yeah. So, and what greater ease would that create in your life? If you live from that sense of an expanded sense of awareness of your environment around you, would you create bumps and grazes and accidents and situations to occur? No, you might be ahead of it. You might be aware of it. And this isn't a doing, even what you were saying, Susie, it's where you get into that natural space of being. So it's not a doing, you're not out watching behind the trees and looking for everything that moves. You have a whisper, you hear the sense, you have a sense, you start to perceive energy in a very different way. So yeah, lots of multiples of benefits to this.
Exactly.
Just about riding in your zone, but I didn't say that out loud. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, everybody watching us now, for joining us tonight, or your morning, wherever you are in the world. And stay tuned for some more cool conversations with Talk to the Animals and my dear friend Susie Godsey and myself, Viv Adcock.
Thank you, Viv. Bye, everybody.